Ross Brown, you're enormously welcome to Destination Uri, the morning programme. You are of the Green Party.
That's right.
In Northern Ireland.
That's right, yeah.
I suppose a simple question that the ordinary man in the street might ask, what is the Green Party in Northern Ireland?
Well, the Green Party is a branch of the Green Party that it's an international movement, essentially. Many people know of the Green Party and associate us with the environment. I think as a party, we are a much broader, have a much broader base of ideas and policies and everything today, anyway. And
with broad brushstrokes, the broadest of brushstrokes. Talk me through that spectrum of policies.
Well, if I give you the four key principles of what the Greens really frame our policies all around: social justice, sustainability, grassroots democracy, and non-violence and peace.
Yes.
So what does all of that mean? And I think that when we start to look at some of the issues of social justice, I mean, we're really concerned about things like inequality, things like child poverty, fuel poverty, educational underachievement, the performance of our health service. So we're really trying to achieve with all of those things a more socially just society, and actually trying to tackle all the injustices that we see in our society. And I think when you look at, for example, something like inequality, I mean, we've got major problems at a global scale where you have around 1% of the world's population owning around 40% of the world's wealth, and the bottom half of the world's population owning around 1% of the world's wealth. And then you apply that to somewhere like Northern Ireland, and we've got major issues like fuel poverty, with 4 in 10 people here not able to.
You were proactive when the council, in its dastardly wisdom, removed the homeless pod in the middle of Belfast.
That's right.
What a silly thing they did. You were up there immediately, and the Green Party, Ross Brown was speaking about it. You were obvious by your concern.
Certainly, I mean, the issue was something that did concern me, and a wider issue, the issue of homelessness, is something that does certainly concern me. The issue of the homeless pod, I mean, I actually contacted, as soon as I heard about it, I contacted a friend of mine who is involved in a homeless charity, 100 Help the Homeless. Yes. And I actually asked him, I said, well, what do you think about this? You know, because I'm not an expert on the topic. Yeah. And it was something, obviously, I was concerned about, and seeing the reaction from people. And he was actually concerned as well that, you know, moving down this route of actually providing outside sleeping pods for people would actually take away from what is really required.
It's almost like a dog kennel.
Yeah,
in a funny kind of way.
It nearly is, yeah, and it isn't.
And I know the people who did it didn't mean it that way.
Well, that was the other question, about who the people that put it there were, and what was their intention. Because I mean, I know maybe some officers from the council have been speaking to them, but I know, for example, through the media that they weren't speaking to anybody in the likes of the Nolan Show or anything.
No, they weren't talking to anybody.
Exactly.
And I put a number of requests through to their email that was on the side of thing, and it was just ignored. You were getting an automatic reply. Well,
yeah, that's it. That was it. And so it was difficult to know what people's intention was, whether this was some type of. I mean, they actually said on it, I think it was some type of social experiment or something.
Yes.
But they didn't actually say what they were doing. As I say, you know, in terms of removing it on the basis of health and safety and everything else, I can kind of see some of the arguments like that. I mean, Stephen Agnew, who I work for up in the Assembly, he used to work in the Simon community, and so he has a bit of experience as well on the ground with helping people who are homeless and out in the streets. And one of the things that he actually said to me, which was quite surprising, like, and people might be surprised this, but in Belfast anyway, his experience was the amount of homeless people that get set on fire by thugs, you know, coming along and attacking them. And he was just saying, you know, this is actually really an issue that you wouldn't normally realise, but he could understand some of the concerns. And the last thing you want to see is a tragedy coming out of something like that.
We had one of those. We had one of those in Dublin. We had in the Phoenix Park, where a homeless man was asleep in a sleeping bag. He was beaten while he was in the bag, and then he was set on fire and he was dead.
It's disgusting, really. It's absolutely disgraceful. Maybe if we can just say one other thing on the theme of homeless. There's a march that's coming up on the, I think, is it the 15th of March in Belfast, and it's basically a march for the homeless. Wow. That just really sort of going to get some speakers, and just to really highlight the issue. You know,
who's organising that?
I think it could be 100 Help the Homeless.
You're Stephen's charity.
No,
he was
Kyle,
Simon. Yeah,
a friend of mine. I think it's Kyle that's organising it. But anyway, it's certainly going to draw in a lot of folks, and I think the really idea is that to actually highlight the issue, but also, you know, on the council, I know that there's moves to actually set up a working group on this issue to actually start to see what more, you know, because it does fall out of the statutory responsibilities of councils anyway, but now when they're getting new planning powers and everything else, it now, like, and I think it should be an issue for the councils, because, you know, what's the point in councillors going into the main building and discussing dogs starting the street and spending money and clean up dogs, and then people out the front of the building are lying on the streets don't have anything. So
well, in the Republic they found it when Jonathan Corey, before Christmas, he lay on the steps of a fancy blue door house opposite Leinster House, the centre of governance, and he died, he perished, and that was him gone. And only then did the government in the Republic start doing something about it, you know. But as a consequence of the pod, there is this committee now within your council starting to look at it. There's progress.
That's what I've been told. I mean, I haven't actually been contacted by anybody about this, but I have been informed that there's a committee that's started, that there's a couple of councillors have said that they're interested in putting it together, and I would be definitely interested in getting involved in that, because I think it's a real, when you see just the extravagant levels of wealth in our society, and then you actually think to yourself, I mean, well, why is it in today's society we've got people living on the streets? It's just, it's unacceptable, you know, it really is a tragedy.
On the wider issue of need in world development, which we can ring fence in terms of Westminster, in terms of our allocation of funding to it. As an example, 50 years ago when I started in world development as a volunteer, we were speaking about a target of 1% of gross national product that would go to the developing world. We've never reached that. No. We're now talking about getting 0.7.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that in 50 years we haven't been able to do the 1%?
It is. My understanding is that actually the UK government anyway has reached the 0.7%.
Oh, they're at the 0.7.
Yeah,
good.
But
good.
And there's some countries in Europe like Sweden and stuff have gone past that and hit the 1%, which is good as well. But you're absolutely right in terms of, you know, the inequality keeps growing. The rich in the world keep getting richer, and the poor, you know, are continue to be poor.
Those 50 years ago that I speak of, there was a kind of an intellectual sentiment that if we don't look after the needs of the people in the developing world, if we don't look after those needs, they will become so poor and so desperate and so angry and so dispossessed that they will come in their hordes north and take us. So we're seeing some of that at the moment with the IS people and the Boko Haram and all the rest of it. So it's in our interest to have a global vision about people's well-being.
Well, this is exact. I mean, but to put it in those terms, it certainly is in our interest. I think to have a more peaceful and stable world, to actually to ensure that everyone benefits from development. And it's rather ironic, really, that the same parties, like the likes of the UKIP and everything, that are coming on board and are raising all. They've got their various issues on the agenda, and one of them that they concerned about is, or they appear to be concerned about, is the issue of migration. But yet at the same time, they want to cut any sort of development aid that the developed countries would actually send to the developing countries. And many of the reasons why people want to migrate and to find themselves a better life, and you can't blame individuals for doing that, is because of the real problems of inequality and deprivation and poverty.
Ross, we lost 350 human beings in the Mediterranean off the island of Lampedusa this week. And they're not coming over to get free health care. They're coming over because they're running scared from what they're leaving behind. Their families are being destroyed.
When you think of like just Syria alone, there's 3 million refugees have left that country since the Civil War, and I mean, Europe has taken in tens of thousands. Tens of thousands, I mean, not like 10, 20, 30,000. And it's a scandal, really, and it's a real injustice when you've got so many people. I mean, millions of those people are in Lebanon, you know, a small, relatively poor country compared to anywhere in Europe, and millions of people have migrated to Lebanon, and Lebanon themselves have actually said, no, we can't accept any more people in. And can you blame a country like that? I mean, when there's so many people coming, and just the burden of helping people who are in distress and fleeing conflict has not been shared. And I feel that the developing world is incredibly selfish in those regards.
I was surprised this week to see the Italians cut back. No, it was a few weeks back there now on Mare Nostrum, their Our Seas project, where they would go out almost to the shores of North Africa and lift people who were perishing out of the water. They stopped that for fiscal reasons. You know, it was such an awful withdrawal, and then we have the people who died there. But in your case, you're obviously a concerned man about social issues. You're in the Green Party. The Green Party doesn't have power. This must cripple you intellectually, emotionally, that you know what should be done, you know what you want to do, but you don't have the power to do it. How do you square that circle, if you like?
I think it certainly is something that really is a challenge in terms of you're seeing so many injustices in the world, and my reason for getting involved in politics was to actually contribute something back and to actually use whatever skills I felt that I could offer to actually try and make the world a better place for people. So yeah, it is difficult, and I don't think it's ever going to be, things are never going to be perfect, but I suppose what you can do is influence the agenda, and certainly, like, I mean, we're for example, in the European Parliament, the Greens have nearly 50 MEPs, where they are a significant bloc in that Parliament, and they are able to actually to push forward certain issues, like, for example, what we've been doing recently on the actually the banking inquiry, and looking into what the banks are basically getting away with, and the scandal there. But also, you know, in different regions, you know, the Greens have. Well, in Germany anyway is a good example. I mean, I think within the regional governments, the Greens are at least in coalition partners for 50 million Germans.
Yes.
So there's progress being made in different places at different times.
In a sense, in the Northern Ireland context, and the fellow I'm going to mention to you now, he was a pretty good guy. You're a kind of John the Baptist party. You're out there paving the way for greater things that are to come. And it will grow from the bottom up, perhaps.
I certainly feel that we have been growing. Like, there's no doubt about it. And I mean, I don't think everything that we do is ever going to be perfect. But one of the things that I think that we're quite distinct in Northern Ireland politics, and that I think people get involved with the Green Party for many of the reasons that I've talked about, the actual political reasons. You know, the real world politics, whereas politics in Northern Ireland, in the other sense, tends to attract people who are involved for the reasons of identity. And I think that for the Greens, it's really trying to say, no, we've got lots of ideas here about how to make the world better, and this is what we want to do to achieve that. And so in that sense, we're quite distinct, you know, and we're also distinct in having those close connections with Greens everywhere else. And really,
you also, if I may say so, you have sufficient confidence in your own belief system, your own identity, not to have to wear it on your sleeve. Yeah, that's done and dusted. You know who you are. Yeah. But you go beyond that and you move forward.
Yeah, I mean, well, in terms of I think that's exactly it. I mean, the issues that we're concerned about transcend identity, and it's actually in recognition of the fact that everybody can be whoever they want to be. And those are in many ways they're issues on the margin of politics. You know, the real issues of politics that we're going to face going forward, especially, is all the things about sustainability, as well as the issues of social justice, which we have for forever. And I think that's one of the other, as I say, key principles of us, is actually trying to make society and our economy develop a new type of economy, and a more resource and energy efficient one. So that is essentially as well another core principle about who we are, and recognising that, you know, carrying on the way we're going with the type of model that we've developed in our society is there could be pretty tragic consequences.
Yes,
there will be, you
know,
if we keep going that direction.
You know, I sometimes think we're in a political kindergarten here in Northern Ireland, and you look elsewhere and you see real issues being debated. Somebody once said, you cannot eat a flag.
Yeah.
You know, you need to work for the flag, not sort of protest about the flag, not to die for the flag, but to live for it, and to, you know, whether it's an Irish Republican flag or whether it's a Union flag, doesn't matter two balls of blue. We need to get on with our lives and make our lives successful and happy, and for our children and our children's children. And it seems to me that although you're a small entity in the overall wheel, in the overall context, you're a very important entity.
Certainly have different things to say, and I think that's really important, you know, and actually driving forward different agendas. And like, for example, I mean, if you look at some of the issues that we've been really championing in the Assembly, the issue of the living wage was something that we tried to introduce twice through the Northern Ireland Assembly, to actually make it, first time it was to actually make it a requirement that when the government bought goods and services from private companies, that those companies would have to pay the living wage, so that it would stop all this race to the bottom when you've got like when you've got people providing like social care to people in our society, and all of that's been outsourced from the health and social trusts to private companies. But then many of those people who work very hard, like as everybody knows, many of those people are on minimum wage, and that's, you know, it's a convenient way the government has actually cut costs, is actually by outsourcing, whether it's catering and cleaning and social care, all those different staff. And actually, you know, I think it's wrong that people aren't being paid a wage that is commensurate with living just a basic standard of living. Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is with more people who are in work poverty now than out of work poverty, and you've got all of these companies who, you know, they're not short of much profit, and yet they're failing to pay the workers on the ground, and many of the people on the top are getting themselves handsome salaries. So that was something we tried to bring through the Assembly, and we actually tried to do it again when they changed the education and library boards, and merged it into the Education Authority. We said, well, should we not be paying everybody?
But that's an interesting thing, because it's a bit, what you're saying there is a bit like saying God is good and the devil is bad. It's that obvious. Why are people not saying, well done, Greens, we're behind you on this?
Well, it's interesting that now the debate has started to change, because actually, I mean, it was vetoed twice in the Assembly. It was vetoed once by the DUP, and then it was defeated once by the Assembly, just as a whole. So we had a majority in the Assembly, which I think was the Ulster Unionist DUP and Alliance Party voted against it the first time, and then it was vetoed the second time by the DUP. But then a couple of weeks after that, Sammy Wilson was on the Stephen Nolan show, and he was actually saying that the living wage was actually a good idea. So it started to change the debate, and now people have started to recognise that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and the Assembly's got the power to do it. So I think that there's all sorts of different reasons why I think it's the old orthodox way of thinking about the economy that holds people back. But when you actually look at some of the research reports that have come out from NICFA, Northern Ireland Association for Community.
I can never remember.
It's basically the Community and Voluntary Association, overarching body. They released a report that was produced by Oxford Economics.
Yeah, let's have it. Let's have the living wage.
They're saying that actually this creates more jobs than you would lose because of the extra spending power in the economy. So, you know, in terms of economic modelling and Oxford Economics and actually producing the evidence to show this is a good idea, it's all there, and it's just a case of...
How do your powerful colleagues in the Assembly treat with you and deal with you? Do they talk to you? Do they look down their nose at you? Do they feel that someday they might just need you to sway a particular vote? Do they court you? Are you there with them, or do they ignore you?
Probably they don't court us as much as might happen in a standard Parliament, where you would have simple majorities or even weighted majorities. The problem with the Assembly is that if something is going to be opposed, all it takes is a majority from either the Nationalists or the majority from the Unionists to actually oppose something. So they have a mutual veto. So they don't come to us that often. There's been times when we have had engagement with the parties and on things where maybe it has come down to a tight vote, and there might not have been a threat that the petition of concern, as it's called, so basically a veto will be used. So yeah, I mean, it's not maybe and because there's only Stephen Agnew, it's not a huge number of us, but it does happen the odd time. I think that certainly, you know, we get a fair bit of stick from the other parties, but that's politics, isn't it?
Stephen Agnew, his provenance, his industrial provenance, his professional provenance, the Simon community. He's a good man.
He is, certainly, yeah. I mean, I can't say too many bad things. He's great to work for, and I think he's done well in the Assembly, and he's really come on as a politician, and I think he's become more recognised. And a couple of years ago, I think he won like Speaker of the Year or something.
Wow.
You know? So I mean, I think I feel he's doing a good job. You know, and he's obviously
you're an important presence there, for goodness sake, and it's a voice that needs to be heard.
Well, that's it, and we very much hope that the electorate will recognise that. You know, coming into the next Assembly elections, that you know it's really important to actually have a Green on the Assembly and actually putting forward those views. Whether or not you agree with them, I think it's important to actually have that democracy and have those ideas being aired, and the participation from all different sectors.
I know that you eschew the sectional politics of tribalism. But where are do the Greens have a policy on a united Ireland, for example?
We've said that basically that we're in line with the Good Friday Agreement, that the future of Northern Ireland should be determined by the people, and basically every party has signed up to that. So in many ways, you know, the whole constitutional question that divides so many people, and if you come to the doorstep, who knows who you're talking to, but as soon as you say you're unionist or you're nationalist, you'll either lose one vote or the other, you know. And for us as a party, it's for the people to decide. We're saying this is about participative democracy. This is about the right of the people to determine the future of the country, rather than actually
your sectional parties, your tribal parties. They might have signed to the agreement, but that's where it stopped. There's no feeling. This is the reality of the agreement. This is what we believe. The future of Northern Ireland is in the hands of the people of Northern Ireland.
Exactly.
And I think there's even an element in there somewhere of an involvement there, that a plebiscite or a vote in the Republic to make sure that so everybody, the population of Ireland, believes this is the way forward. It shouldn't be an issue now at all.
Well, exactly, and this is I think it suits the particular agenda of the various parties to maintain the constitutional question as an issue, or the issue of vote for us to keep them out. And the reality, I mean, the whole false debate over who's going to be First Minister of Northern Ireland. And actually, when you look at the power of the First and the Deputy First Minister, they're exactly the same. I mean, Peter Robinson can't do shopping without Martin McGuinness calling with him. You know,
I love it.
They're exactly the same in terms of power, and they have to. Each of them keep each other in check. So
I was going to say to you there, don't worry about Peter doing the shopping. He'll get some of the Islamic community going to do it for him. But that all resolved very, very well. At that time, there was difficulties. One of the things that I think will mark our coming of age within politics, you know, we have a huge, in this town, we have a huge Polish community. We have a huge new European community throughout Northern Ireland. I would love to see more and more and more of our new neighbours. I don't regard them as migrants or foreigners. There are new neighbours in politics, but they're not coming in their numbers we would want.
I think that, and I don't blame them in many ways, because the political system is so polarised and divisive and based on national identity that it maybe doesn't attract the newcomers in the way that it should. But certainly within the Greens, we have had folks coming from different places in Europe who have been affiliated with the Green Party in their country.
Well done.
And we had in East Belfast, we had Gregor Claus, who was from Germany, and he was involved with the German Greens, and he was studying here, and he stood as a candidate for us. And we've had various folks standing as candidates and getting involved. So there's obviously folks who come and go, you know, as students and everything else. But we certainly have. And actually a guy who was up doing a placement with us a couple of years ago, Timo, who is now a councillor himself back in Germany.
Fantastic.
So it's great to have those connections, you know.
And those connections are there. The greatest thing, the greatest issue that you're addressing at the moment in Northern Ireland is what? What is when you get up in the morning and go into your office, what is the thing that makes you go, wow?
That's an interesting one. I think that when at different levels of government, there'll obviously be different issues that are important. In terms of the Assembly, I mean, one of the things that we were really campaigning very hard on was the issue of fracking and drilling for shale oil and gas. And we're by and large we're winning that campaign. We're actually we've had in Fermanagh anyway, one of the main companies who were proposing to extract the oil and gas had their licence terminated. So it's going through the courts and that at the moment, because they've taken out a legal review of the government's decision. But it was a great victory. We're delighted that it happened. There's still 2 other licences that for petroleum exploration in Antrim that we're still concerned about, but I think we're doing well with that campaign anyway. And that was certainly something that was driving us. I think recently as well we had the welfare reform bill, which passed through the Assembly just this week actually, and it was a piece of it was a new law that was introduced in Britain actually in 2012.
Sinn Féin were very opposed to it at the beginning, and then it changed.
Well, certainly, I mean, certainly what happened was Sinn Féin had said that they would veto the bill and basically that it wouldn't pass as is. Now they changed their position on that insofar as they accepted the bill. They accepted all the introduction of all the measures, the bedroom tax, the cap on benefits, all the different things, cap on benefits, and the reductions in children's disability allowance, all sorts of different things that were introduced that are completely contrary to where you think a party of the left would be. They have agreed with the DUP to set aside about £500 million of money to put into a top-up fund that will be allocated. But the key point is that how that money is to be allocated hasn't been decided. And of course the DUP and others on the executive will have a veto over how that money is allocated. So all the promises that have been made to actually ensure that that nobody will be worse off as a result of this legislation, that can't be a promise, because they have no power to ensure that. And I think it's been rather unfortunate that there were specific ideas that we put forward to actually enshrine in law that the bedroom tax wouldn't be introduced, to actually ensure that children's disability allowance wouldn't be reduced. You know, there were certain things that we made suggestions that that money should have been allocated to, but unfortunately those suggestions were rejected by the Assembly, so that was another one, because I mean, we're talking about all the issues of homelessness and everything else. I mean, when you're taking away the basic social security from people, and in many ways this is taking away. Many of the most vulnerable people in our society will have money taken away from them.
Ross Browne, when did you come into politics?
The first time I stood for election was last year.
You're joking?
2014, stood in the European and the local council elections. Was first time standing.
Wow.
But I've been working up in the Assembly for the Green Party anyway since 2011, and before that I was doing a placement with the Finance Committee. Nice. So I'd also been working, on the staff side of the Assembly. A wee bit of experience there. But yeah, it was only 2011 I started working for the Greens, and then 3 years later I was standing for election.
Well, you're a most agreeable and facilitating man, because you agreed when you heard what we wanted to come down and to sit and chew the fat with us, and I thank you for doing that.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, you're so welcome, and you're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
All the best to you.
Cheers now. All the best.
That's Ross Browne.